In support of the bill before us. I will note that I did vote in favor of the amendment that just failed, and I'm a little disappointed because I do believe that we had an opportunity to go beyond the underlying bill in an effort to improve the situation regarding crime and the rule of law in our state. And I've been kind of tracking this bill throughout this year and also last year. It seems like the never-ending conversation in Connecticut now, which is the rash of car thefts and rise in crime generally in our state. And the thing that, from my observation, gets lost in that conversation all the time is why this is happening and how we got here. And I think it's important because people need to understand the impact of this body and our decision-making in the world that we live in. I remember the other night suggesting during some bill debate that what we do here matters. And it concerns me because I don't always believe that we are as informed as we should be on the bills that come before this chamber. And I don't always believe that we have all of the necessary information to make the proper decisions. And that's even beyond the overarching understanding that we engage in a lot of decision-making that I don't think we have a right to. Government has different roles at different places in society. You wouldn't want the federal government dictating the dog license policy in some small town in Connecticut, for example. We have to right-size our decision-making, and we also have to recognize when and where it's our proper role to intervene. And I appreciate the fact that we're having an actual conversation about what I think is the number one important role of state government, and that is public safety. I'm somebody who often advocates that the government's too big and does too much, and we need to stay out of the way of people. But I'm also someone who recognizes that if there is a role of government, the number one job that we have is to keep our constituents safe. In fact, I think that is the birthplace of government. I think government exists because people got together and said, what are we going to do to make sure that our agreements, our contracts with one another are upheld? How is my property going to be protected? How is my individual safety going to be protected? And they recognized that the establishment of a limited government that could take care of those things was advantageous to all. And of course, I'm frustrated that government has gone way beyond that since then. And I'm also frustrated that we seem to have forgotten the importance of that role in and of itself. So I don't want to spend a long time up here, but I do want to remind us of some of the things that have gone on that have brought us to this place. And I'm sure there are people that are going to have different opinions about where we are, about the state of Connecticut when it comes to how much crime there actually is. But I know that in my district, when I speak to my local law enforcement professionals or people in the coffee shop, they think crime is up. They're hearing about cars being stolen from their neighbors. I think somebody stole 20 catalytic converters off of school buses a couple of weeks ago. There are things happening. People are sending in copies of their Ring doorbell footage on Facebook. I'm getting individual accounts of the rise in crime from my district on a regular basis. I was first elected in 2010, started my service in January of 2011 along with Governor Malloy, and one of his first signature policies that he put into effect was the risk reduction credit policy. And for those that don't remember, that was Public Act 11-51. And that was a program that essentially provided good time credits, good behavior credits to those imprisoned in our state so they could get out of prison early. And myself and most Republicans, I think, objected strongly way back then in 2011 when that first happened because we felt that the application of the credits was not being done properly, that people were earning credits for reasons that they shouldn't, simply signing up for a class but never attending. and that there were certain things, certain crimes that just should not be eligible. And to this day, Madam President, I put an amendment in, or rather a bill proposal, just about every cycle asking us to stop giving risk reduction credits to those guilty of sexual assault or crimes involving a firearm. And would you believe it, that bill proposal is ignored year after year by the Judiciary Committee. My good friend, former Senator Len Suzio, he did a lot of good work on this. When the risk reduction credit program first went into effect back in 2011, he began tracking the crimes of those that were let out of prison early. And there were significant crimes, murders in fact. There was a murder in the town of Meriden from someone who was recently released right at the time that this bill began. And it made a lot of headline news. And Senator Suzio, to this day, and to his credit, even though he hasn't been in office for some time, is still tracking this information. And if I had thought about it, I would have actually reached out to him to grab that information because I think it would be useful for us today. Anyway, that risk reduction credit program survives today. And I'm not suggesting that it should go away entirely, but I think that it ought to be measured for its success. And success ought to be measured on the subject of public safety first. In 2015, we passed another bill, Public Act 15-2, the Second Chance Society. And among other things, this bill suspended prosecution on second drug offenses and reduced enhanced penalties on drug possession near schools. These are relatively minor things, but my point here today is that we did not get here in one fell swoop. We got here by a slow and steady change to our attitude towards crime and punishment in this state. And we've only been moving in one direction, which is away from being strict and punishing offenders for the sake of the innocent people that we represent. This is always a different topic because every time you try and bring this subject up, you're either soft on crime, or you're too hard on crime and you don't care about recidivism or trying to prevent recidivism through other methods and measures, or trying to actually recognize the root causes of problems. That's why I said I was upset about the amendment failing, because I think that was a genuine attempt by my colleagues to put forward a bill that actually addressed root causes of why young people in particular turn to crime. And what a mistake. I think that's something we all should be able to agree on, that we want to prevent the problem at its root. Later on, Public Act 15-183, also in 2015, an act concerning the juvenile justice system. This changed the transfer of B felonies. Some of them include manslaughter in the first degree, robbery in the first degree, to adult court, and made them discretionary rather than mandatory, and also raised the minimum age for automatic transfers from age 14 to 15. If you don't think that somehow these minor changes in the way we treated very young offenders have translated into where we are today, then I think you're missing the point. We have created an environment that has led to where we are today. In 2016, Public Act 16-147, recommendations of the JJPOC, eliminated as reasons for detention the possibility that the child might run away, or the possibility that the child will commit another crime. Also, the possibility that that child would be a risk to the community. 2 + 2 = 4, folks. I'm just providing the 2 + 2 here. You can make your own conclusion. 2017, Public Act 17-2, we raised the age from age 16 to 18 and how we treat juvenile offenders. And I remember actually sitting in the Judiciary Committee and listening to the state's chief prosecutor at the time, Kevin Kane. And obviously he was walking a tightrope about what he could and could not say. But anyone who was there got the message. He was very eloquent in his remarks. But one thing he said was that motor vehicle thefts may be the issue of the day this year, but next year it could well be armed robberies, sexual assaults, or some other violent felony. And I think that's why we're here today, because we can see that happening. We can see that the crimes that are happening are not becoming more minor. They are becoming more and more significant all the time. Also, in 2018, the Connecticut Juvenile Training School was closed. In 2019, we passed Public Act 19-90, an act concerning the use of force and pursuits, which limited police pursuits. In 2020, of course, was the Police Accountability Bill, where we are dragged in here on special session to pass a bill that was unbelievably controversial, and that every person that voted against it made very clear during our remarks in this chamber, to the press, to the public, about what was going to happen if we passed it. And lo and behold, it happened. That bill included the elimination of qualified immunity in certain circumstances and consent searches. Two things that I think have undermined law enforcement in a big way, made the job of your average police officer in this state infinitely more difficult. And finally, last year, we passed Clean Slate, which I don't think I can claim has an impact on our level of crime today, but it's just another thing in a long line of policies that make it clear that this legislature in this state is not interested in public safety as much as it is in undermining the system that we have had in place, which has kept us safe through history. I'm going to vote for this bill today, Madam President, because the bill's a good bill. There's a lot of good things in here, and some of those things actually go to many of the points I just made. And thank heavens there are people that are adult enough in this legislature to recognize when we've made some mistakes and address them by trying to make good policy. But we have a long way to go. And I think it's important for people to recognize how we got here. That's why I just went through this little history lesson. It's just to describe the fact that our choices in here and our votes do matter. And we can affect what happens in the world. And that means we can affect things in a very positive way, but sadly we can also affect things in a very negative way. And I believe that our policies, many of which I just mentioned, have led to many, many tragedies that need not have happened. So I want to just encourage my colleagues that when we come back next year, that we do not consider this bill the end of the discussion and job well done. We have a lot more work to do to restore law and order in this state. Thank you, Madam President.